an ecosystem consisting of 7 deputies, 12 research organizations, and 85 research centers dispersed throughout Indonesia. Research Organization for Aeronautics and Space, Research Organization for Nuclear Energy, Research Organization for Energy and Manufacture, Research Organization for Earth Sciences and Maritime, Research Organization for Life Sciences and Environment, Research Organization for Electronics and Informatics, Research Organization for Social Sciences and Humanities, Research Organization for Archaeology, Language, and Literature, Research Organization for Health, Research Organization for Nanotechnology and Material, Research Organization for Agriculture and Food, Research Organization for Governance, Economy, and Community Welfare. BRIN catalyzing research and innovation to develop an advanced scientific ecosystem in Indonesia with 2 main targets. BRIN realizes the tremendous potential of the nation's youth in the field of science and technology. Thus, various research and innovation policies are being formulated to develop and cultivate human resources with high competence and aptitude in science and technology. Creating many excellent programs is a form of BRIN's commitment to researchers, innovators, and the general population from various disciplines across the nation. The research and innovation ecosystem quality improvement in Indonesia is also realized through the collaboration of various ministries, institutions, domestic industries, and regional governments, to name a few, by forming the Regional Research and Innovation Agency, or RIDA. Moreover, cooperation with various foreign research institutions continue to be developed through active participation as member of various organizations and international forums. BRIN organizes research into a more effective and efficient process by integrating human resources, infrastructure, and budget from various research and development institutions. Oriented by a national research priority, BRIN routinely enacts comprehensive evaluations from various research and development institutions. This effort is supported through the continued management and improvement of various research and innovation facilities located across 17 regions of Indonesia, dedicated towards the development of science and technology. BRIN continues to improve our contribution to research and innovation towards national development by developing and revitalizing 4 areas of science and technology, or KST. An integrated area consisting of research laboratory facilities, testing laboratories, and industrial facilities for both startups and SMEs, tenant office rooms, co-working space, meeting rooms, gallery rooms, and other supporting facilities. BRIN is here to manifest the future of a golden Indonesia 2045 by consolidating science and technology resources and creating a resource ecosystem and research-based economical foundation. Transforming Indonesia as a global reference in the development and application of science and technology practices and the good of humankind. Nature is the source of inspiration. Knowledge is the foundation. And to be put in praxis for the sake of the nation.
Assalamualaikum Pak.
Research is our strength to overcome any limitations. Innovation is the guiding vision that drives us towards the future. We cannot face this alone. We must stand together to make our vision a reality. Growing strong upon the land of Nusantara, a magical place filled with miracle and wonder. A land spanning 2 continents and 2 oceans, rich in culture and biodiversity. We and Indonesia are the necessary combination to realize the grand visions of the future. Like an orchestra, BRIN harmonizes research, development, assessment, application, and also synergies, invention, and innovation in Indonesia. We created an ecosystem consisting of 7 deputies, 12 research organizations, and 85 research centers dispersed throughout Indonesia. Research Organization for Aeronautics and Space, Research Organization for Nuclear Energy, Research Organization for Energy and Manufacture, Research Organization for Earth Sciences and Maritime, Research Organization for Life Sciences and Environment, Research Organization for Electronics and Informatics, Research Organization for Research is our strength to overcome any limitations. Innovation is the guiding vision that drives us towards the future. We cannot face this alone. We must stand together to make our vision a reality. Growing strong upon the land of Nusantara, a magical place filled with miracle and wonder. A land spanning 2 continents and 2 oceans, rich in culture and biodiversity. We and Indonesia are the necessary combination to realize the grand visions of the future. Like an orchestra, BRIN harmonizes research, development, assessment, application, and also synergies, invention, and innovation in Indonesia. We created an ecosystem consisting of 7 deputies, 12 research organizations, and 85 research centers dispersed throughout Indonesia. Research Organization for Aeronautics and Space, Research Organization for Nuclear Energy, Research Organization for Energy and Manufacture, Research Organization for Earth Sciences and Maritime, Research Organization for Life Sciences and Environment, Research Organization for Electronics and Informatics, Research Organization for Social Sciences and Humanities, Research Organization for Archaeology, Language, and Literature, Research Organization for Health, Research Organization for Nanotechnology and Material, Research Organization for Agriculture and Food, Research Organization for Governance, Economy, and Community Welfare. BRIN catalyzing research and innovation to develop an advanced scientific ecosystem in Indonesia with 2 main targets. BRIN realizes the tremendous potential of the nation's youth in the field of science and technology. Thus, various research and innovation policies are being formulated to develop and cultivate human resources with high competence and aptitude in science and technology. Creating many excellent programs is a form of BRIN's commitment to researchers, innovators, and the general population from various disciplines across the nation. The research and innovation ecosystem quality improvement in Indonesia is also realized through the collaboration of various ministries, institutions, domestic industries, and regional governments, to name a few, by forming the Regional Research and Innovation Agency, or RIDA. Moreover, cooperation with various foreign research institutions continue to be developed through active participation as member of various organizations and international forums. BRIN organizes research into a more effective and efficient process by integrating human resources, infrastructure, and budget from various research and development institutions. Oriented by a national research priority, BRIN routinely enacts comprehensive evaluations from various research and development institutions. This effort is supported through the continued management and improvement of various research and innovation facilities located across 17 regions of Indonesia, dedicated towards the development of science and technology. BRIN continues to improve our contribution to research and innovation towards national development by developing and revitalizing 4 areas of science and technology, or KST. An integrated area consisting of research laboratory facilities, testing laboratories, and industrial facilities for both startups and SMEs, tenant office rooms, co-working space, meeting rooms, gallery rooms, and other supporting facilities. BRIN is here to manifest the future of a golden Indonesia 2045 by consolidating science and technology resources and creating a resource ecosystem and research-based economical foundation. Transforming Indonesia as a global reference in the development and application of science and technology practices and the good of humankind. Nature is the source of inspiration. Knowledge is the foundation, and to be put in praxis for the sake of the nation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and participants. Welcome to BRIN, Arizona State University Knowledge Exchange Sessions on Governing AI Data Centers, Lessons from the US and Asia. We are delighted to have you here, Professor Chris, both in person and online for these important workshops organized by the Center for Public Policy Research at BRIN. To begin our programs, I would like to invite the head of the Center for Public Policy Research, Dr. Yanuar Farida Wismayanti, to deliver the opening remarks and share an objective of today's sessions, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rizal. Ya, oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished speaker, Dr. Chris Harley from Arizona State University. And also, we also have another speaker, Mas Cahyo. Maybe they already in online. And also all the colleagues, researcher, policymaker, student, and all participants. That joining us from different location, yeah. Maybe they also have from our location, because we have another location of our co-working space areas in our organization. On behalf of the Public Policy Research Center, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's at webinar AI Data Centers Governance and Impact. And we are honored to have Dr. Chris Harley from Arizona State University as our speaker. as we know, this topic is important. We already have discussed this morning with Dr. Chris also that artificial intelligence or AI is rapidly transforming on societies, economics, and governments around the world. And in recent years, advance in machine learning, generative AI, and large language model have accelerated the adoption of
Ini kan
AI technologies
ada untuk
across
ini ya,
many
ada untuk
sectors.
nama
And I
sertifikatnya.
think
Untuk
this innovation,
masuk ke ini gimana caranya Mas Aja ini daftarnya? Apa udah tutup ya?
okay, maybe they can move, yeah.
Untuk
And I
isi
think this innovation are reshaping how information is produced, analyzed, and also utilized for decision making for our governments and policymaker. And government are increasingly exploring AI application in many sector also. We also have a research team in our research center for public policy that focus on this topic. And so they also exploring AI application to improve public service delivery, policy analysis, urban management, healthcare system, education, and also citizen engagement. However, the rapid expansion of AI also brings a significant challenge. Behind every AI application lies a complex digital infrastructure, particularly data centers that provide the computational power and also data storage and also connectivity necessary to support AI system. As AI capabilities continue to grow, so the concern regarding energy consumption, environmental sustainability, data governance, cybersecurity, and also privacy protection, digital sovereignty. This is also the important thing because sometimes the information about how to use the AI is not delivery well to our society. So I think this is also important to concern on how to use AI and on digital sovereignty and also equitable access to technologies resources. And for governments and policymakers, this development raises important question: how can we ensure that infrastructure is developed responsibly?
pakai HP.
And also what governance framework are needed to balance innovation with public accountability, and how should government address the social, economic, and environment impact of AI data center. So I think this is also our concern, how the impact of the technology and also to use AI is proper. This is very also important. We will discuss today. This question highly why government must evolve alongside technology advancement, and effective governance is not only about regulating technology, but also about creating an enabling environment that support innovation, protect public interests, and promote sustainable development. So we are therefore delighted to have Dr. Chris Harley with us today to share his expertise and insight on these critical issues. And we believe that this discussion will provide valuable perspective for researchers, policymakers, and also practitioners seeking to understand the opportunities and challenges presented by AI data centers and the broader AI ecosystem. And this webinar also reflects our commitment for strengthening international collaboration in research and knowledge exchange, and also we see a significant opportunity for future cooperation between our research center and Arizona State University. I think this is a good collaboration for the next, and also thank you for Universitas Indonesia also is for meet Dr. Chris to our research center also. I think this is the important collaboration for the next. Finally, I would like to express our sincere appreciation to Dr. Chris Harley and also for accepting our invitation and sharing his knowledge with us. And also thank all for the participant for taking the time to join this important discussion. And thank you for all of participant. I wish you all productive and insightful webinar. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yanti, for your inspiring words and for setting the context of these collaborations. I think for these sessions, and I thought Dr. Chris I thought you will online, but I'm very surprised that you are physically come here. So if it is your first visit, I hope you already see our video about the BRIN, National Innovations Agency. It is the biggest organizations, research organizations in Indonesia. So you have now, it's just a small part of BRIN, of our organizations, and you can find each of the expertise in this room also. Okay. Now, we will continue with presentations from BRIN on data governance research for public policy. The presentations will highlight how data governance frameworks can support the evidence-based decision-making in Indonesia public sector. And please welcome to Mr. Cahyo Trianggoro, researcher at BRIN. So he's online. I think you can have your floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rizal, for the. Okay, thank you, Pak Rizal, for the opportunity. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce myself. My name is Cahyo Trianggoro from Research Center for Public Policy. As Ibu Yanti mentioned, that I'm part of Digital Governance and Digital Transformation Research Group. Currently, we have several projects that ongoing regarding the artificial intelligence that we would like to emphasize at this session. And can Mas Amir help me to show the slides? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mas Amir. Can we make it in a full screen mode? So now I would like to emphasize about the social, environmental, and policy impact about the AI data centers. As we may know that the rapid of technological advancement in artificial intelligence have the side effect, and it would be very dangerous if we could not mitigate some risks that might arise in advancement of technological. Can we move to the next slide, Mas Amir? And okay. Yeah, despite its rapid growth, generative AI brings several challenges. We can move to the next slide. Yes, there are several challenges that we separate into context in social challenges. First of all is about the noise population. On the social sites, data centers generate noise from generators, chillers, I mean the cooling system of GPU and HVAC system. Prolonged exposure can reduce quality of life nearby communities and become a local planning issue. Furthermore, we also face the privacy and legal frameworks regarding the Indonesian Data Protection Regulation or PDP. It's the law of 27 of 2022. It has obligation for any data producers, data processors to protect the confidential issues. Privacy is a core concern from this law and regulation. Model training and data collection must comply with the applicable laws in Indonesian context, of course. For example, national regulation. And if we reflect in the international, we can refer to the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, that requiring lawful databases, data minimization, and mechanism for that subject rights and regress. And another is about the accountability issues. According the data centers, accountability is frequently unclear between among the developers, providers, and contractors may share parts of responsibilities. As we may know that we also collect data from several public websites, and we cannot track the provenance of each data. And for the responsible AI, we should make it more clear, and we need to develop some mechanism or regulation according to the Indonesian national regulation, PDP, Personal Data Protection Regulation. Another challenge is about accountability gaps and equal access. I mean, accountability is frequently unclear, and because training large model is expensive, capabilities concentrate among high-income organization. Mostly for any organization that have a capability or capital that very huge, they can access for every features in artificial intelligence. This is unequal access hampers innovation in lower resource communities, and embeds power is asymmetries in who can build and control generative AI system. And in the social challenge, we also emphasize about the involving child labor. As we may know that artificial intelligence technologies is rely on semiconductor and GPU, that it comes from the natural resources. Perhaps the most urgent ethical issues is the labor in upstream supply chains that conducted in the GPU. Some mining areas that supply mineral for semiconductors involve child labors and hazardous condition. Addressing these issues, we require the supply chains transparency, audits, and enforcement of labor standards. We can move to the next slides about the environmental challenges. Yes, as we can see in the screen, the AI and data centers also requires the high voltage electricity in more advanced technological, it's increasing electricity consumption. And also the derivative issue is about the exploitation of natural resources like gold, copper, rare minerals, and aluminum, which is the material is used for the development of semiconductor, that the backbone technologies for the artificial intelligence, the infrastructures. And then another challenges is about the water contamination, air pollution, and also the soil degradation. the mining and semiconductor fabrication consume and contaminate water, chemical runoff, and heavy metals threaten local water quality. Certain data centers cooling approach also increase the local water withdrawals and can stress water scarce regions because as we know that the GPU is running for the high tech. They need the cooling system and they using the water that come from the region and it can stress water and scarce. Okay, next slide. So this is some of the mitigation social and environmental impacts. For the parameter efficient, we can fine tuning to have the optimized model performance while using fewer resources. And the next one is reuse the existing model. We also encourage the reuse of pre-trained data. So this is that Pak Rizal also mentioned in the beginning that we also emphasize about the data governance. The responsibility how the researchers and the developers the artificial intelligence also increase the transparency of the use data and also how to share their data for the public goods and we can also adoption about the FAIR principles which stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Fair sharing also reduce redundant full-scale retraining, improve transparency, and allow lower resource group to build responsibly. This means making generative AI models easily discoverable through the unique identifier and standardized metadata. It can help to improve the interoperability and findability the dataset, ensuring they are openly without significant barriers or utilizing consistent format for compatibility across various application and platform, providing clear documentation and the licensing to facilitate use. And to mitigate about the labor condition, we also must comply with the adopt the labor protection regulation in Indonesia and supply chains due diligence, living wage, safety requirement, subcontractor transparency, and remediation for violation. And ethical about the governance for AI, generative AI, governance must be enforceable, require environmental and social impact assessment for large AI project. Because as we may know that we are in the condition that everyone is using AI, but there is very minimum or lack of guidelines about how do we measure the impact of the energy that used for the generating some recommendation. So we need to mandate the audits and public reporting and use the procurement to reward model and services that meet environmental, labor, and fair sharing criteria. Multi-stakeholder oversight among the industry, government, and civil society is essential. And we also encourage about how every stakeholder is collaborate to govern the use of AI. Next slide. I think it is the last of our slide. And the future direction, I think Kerry can elaborate about how we can govern the AI, not only about the utilization, but also the behind the resource that takes for the AI generative. Next slide. Yes, this is the ongoing project in our research group, Digital Transformation and Governance Research Group. Currently, we are doing the indigenous data sovereignty principles on indigenous knowledge on data collection. It also in the future maybe it can be utilized or exploited for any generative AI. And we also conduct how the sharing benefit between the indigenous knowledge and the researchers and also the developers of generative AI in the future. Also, we conduct the social economic integration for eligible criteria for those who eligible for social security program from the government. And the next one is AI governance for food security sectors. And the last one is digital competency mapping that currently we have collaboration with some government in Indonesia. I think that's all, Pak Riza, about the presentation. Actually, I would love to have a conversation or discussion, but unfortunately, currently I have another meeting in next room. So maybe for we open for any collaboration in the future, and we can follow up maybe with the participant or Bu Dian in the room if any collaboration in the future. I think that's all. Thank you very much, Pak Riza, for an opportunity. Hopefully, you can enjoy the session for today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Cahyo, for the insightful presentations. The challenges that opportunities and outline provide a strong foundation for our discussions today. And also, I also notes about the future of the AI for our society in Indonesia. And also, actually, there is many questions to you, but you have to leave for another meeting. Okay, so as we move forward, it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Chris Hartley. Dr. Hartley is an assistant professor at Arizona State University School of Sustainability and a senior global future scientist at the Global Futures Laboratory. He holds a PhD in the public policy from the National University of Singapore, where his dissertation was awarded the prestigious Wang Gungwu Medal. I'm sorry if I mentioned wrong. His research spans governance, innovation system, smart cities, and sustainability with extensive experience across Asia and the United States. If you can type the name of Dr. Chris Hartley, you can see there's a link, the website for Dr. Hartley. So Dr. Hartley will deliver his keynote and governing AI data centers lesson from US and Asia, followed by interactive exchange. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Chris Hartley. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's a true pleasure to be here. I first want to express my thanks to you, Dr. Rizal, as the moderator, and also Dr. Yanti for your invitation to present here before your colleagues. And of course, also my great thanks to my collaborators at the University of Indonesia Faculty of Administrative Science. And thank you all for making this happen. So this is a very exciting time, and I really appreciate being here. So terima kasih, and thank you very much. So this is such an exciting time to be looking at social science issues around technology. As we have talked about just now, AI is really transforming a lot of aspects of society, from work to how we relate to each other, to how we simply find information about restaurants, to everything else. And there's a lot of excitement around the potential of AI. And then, of course, there's also a lot of anxiety as well about what AI means for our future and how can we maintain AI in an ethical way, transparent, safe, and in a way that is consistent with our public values, with what the people want. And it's on that last issue that I focus. So I'm not an engineer. I don't go into the technical side of it too far. I'm looking at how we make decisions about AI and AI infrastructure, public infrastructure. And when we talk about making decisions, we talk about who are involved in that, primarily governments, public policy, corporations, and those who are innovating the technologies. And then, of course, we have to think about communities that are impacted. So the people who are living near the data centers, the people who are using AI, the people whose information is being used to train AI models. So all of this is relevant to our discussion. And I'm going to focus today on the physical manifestation of AI. We think of AI as a force, an intangible force that is out there, and it's impacting us in real ways. But data centers are an interesting topic because they're physical. they're a place, a building, and they bring together so many different policy issues. When we talk about AI, we can think about jobs and employment, we can think about society. When we talk about data centers, we're moving that conversation to a very local level, and we're talking about very practical things: zoning, infrastructure, energy, water, noise, heat, critical minerals, et cetera. And so we're bringing into the conversation a lot of information about urban planning, about neighborhood collaborations, about community development. And a lot of these issues, I think, make the topic of data centers really quite interesting. So I have a slide presentation, and if we could maybe put that up there, it'll help us move through. One moment while we get it set up. Great, thank you very much. So cover slide again, very pleased to be here. And when I speak about data centers and AI, I am actually representing the work of a lot of collaborators that I have right now, a data center working group on governance related to AI and data centers. And this includes scholars from across the United States and from around the world. A lot of these ideas have been developed in collaboration with my colleagues at the University of Utah, John Fisk, Cal State Fullerton, David Adams, Alicia Amin at Auburn University, and a number of other colleagues around the country. And then in Japan, Daniel Del Barrio Alvarez and Ayub Sharifi at Hiroshima University. So we're working right now to develop a research plan that looks at data center issues and governance across countries in a comparative sense. And currently we're working on the US, Finland, and Japan. We're going to be adding South Korea, Thailand, hopefully Indonesia with collaboration capacity, and really hoping to develop a new wave of global wisdom and understanding about how we should approach this sort of transformational issue. So let's jump into the specifics. We'll go next slide here. We know that AI is all over the news all the time. And if we could go to the next slide, we'll see an example of that. Yes. So here's an example, New York Times article from just a few days ago, from last week, I believe. And we see a lot of these types of articles that are springing up. We know that, and I speak of the U.S. context, in the U.S., politics are very noisy. People speak up. They let their opinions be known. And right now, many people are concerned and confused about AI, the growth of AI, very rapid impacts. And then, of course, data centers popping up in their communities, these huge buildings. What are they for? They seem mysterious. They seem to be an intrusion on local life, the quietness or the peacefulness of a neighborhood or of a small community. And we're seeing this everywhere. And this is just one of many examples of a person who's sort of pushing back against this data center. It says here 3,800 football fields in size. That's just inconceivably large. A lot of these data centers are built in semi-rural or suburban areas where there's a lot of land space and where there's an opportunity to use energy and water nearby. So what we've seen in the U.S. is a lot of meetings, public hearings and town council meetings, and people pushing back against the council and the mayor in any given community. And in this instance, this made the news here at the New York Times because the people on the council were a bit resistant to answering questions from the public about these data centers, including some questions about whether these politicians had to sign non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. And at the same time, we see this issue of transparency and being a little bit violated in cases like this. People want to know what's going on, how the decisions are made about data centers. And right now, in some communities, they're a little bit concerned that that isn't being addressed. We'll go to the next slide. The next slide is the previous one is just a further, a couple of quotes of note from that article. We live here for a reason, and that's to get away from these big businesses, big government and technology. So it's frustrating that they tracked us down and showed up at our doorstep anyway. This really reflects a kind of American political ethic, which says, we want to live peacefully in our own community, in our own world. And we have different reasons for wanting to escape the noise of cities or the political dynamics or the technology. And we want to go back to a simpler life. And yet you see AI data centers starting to show up in communities like this and people being frustrated that, the modern world is being brought back to their doorstep after they had attempted to escape it. So it's a very interesting dimension of the discourse going on. Another quote says, "We would like some guardrails on this project out in Broadview." Broadview is the name of the town. Asking the county to pass an interim zoning ordinance so it could have time to study the project's impact. So timing here is a key issue. A lot of these things are being done very quickly. Large corporations and AI companies need capacity very quickly. So rolling out these data centers, you end up going to communities that can approve them quickly, that can connect the data centers to the electricity grid, that can hook them up to water supplies such as needed, and that will approve the zoning and approve the construction very quickly. Otherwise, they'll go to the next community that will actually do so as well. The person in the photo is quoted as saying, "There's a monster coming. I'm just trying to warn everybody about it." So you can see the level of concern, and we see a lot of this in the U.S. around this discussion. Next slide, please. So overview of data centers, of course, all the activities that we do involving AI have a physical consequence. The vast and energy intensive data centers are how this is possible. And thus this brings us into the realm of, sort of physical realities around planning, the environment, natural resources. And any place that we're making decisions about those resources are also going to bring us into the topic of social and political systems. And when we talk about social and political systems, we have to think about things like public trust, public belief in government and policies, et cetera. So what are the specific issues we're looking at with data centers? Sustainability and environmental issues are large. Of course, in many communities, these have already been topics, but data centers accelerates the importance of these topics. In a community that might be water stressed, a data center has the potential to make it even more water stressed. In a community where energy prices are high, a data center might threaten to make those energy prices even higher, with consequences for low-income people and equality. There's also the issue of the role of the private sector leadership. So the private sector has for a number of years now been under pressure to exhibit commitment to social or environmental issues. Sometimes we refer to that as ESG, energy, social, and governance, although these are becoming bad words in the United States given the current political climate. But some people still believe that there is a responsibility by corporations to pay attention to the environment and the social impacts that their activities are causing. And at this scale, it's definitely relevant. We'll go to the next slide. This is a map, interesting map of energy capacity or energy load that is related to data centers. Basically, what this map illustrates is the spatial distribution across the country. Where are the data centers concentrating? Where are they locating? And you can see kind of at the bottom left, that's where I live. There's a big red splotch there right below AZ for Arizona. And that red splotch is in the Phoenix metropolitan area, what we refer to lovingly as the Valley of the Sun, because the sun shines all the time there. And it is also a place, because the sun shines so much, there's not many clouds, there's not much rain. and therefore we have water problems. So we take the good with the bad in that case. But a lot of data centers there, a number of data centers around what we call the Texas Triangle. That's in the bottom middle there. So that's Dallas, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. So this, of course, is clustering primarily around Austin and the tech industries there. And then if you go over to the right, kind of the top right, if I had a pointer, I would show you, that's around DC. And actually not in Washington, DC itself, the nation's capital, but in across the river in Northern Virginia. And Northern Virginia is probably the highest concentration of data centers we see in the United States, many of them related to government functions, but also so proximity to other infrastructure that make sense. But we see data centers clustering primarily around cities and big cities because big cities have the energy capacity, the water capacity, the labor pool, and then some of the other physical, infrastructure, roads, transport, et cetera, that would help to build these things out pretty quickly. However, there are some cases where data centers are going in very rural areas, into the countryside. And some of those questions are, can those smaller towns handle these massive data centers? Can they build out their electricity generation capacity quickly enough? Can they build out water, extraction, delivery, processing, and wastewater management, all the rest of these types of things that come with it? We'll go to the next slide. Here's Southeast Asia. So this is planned additional capacity in megawatts. This is and maybe if we could click the OK button at the top there and we get just a little bit more of the slide, the one at the very top there where it says OK. You see that one up there? If somebody could just click out of that. I just want to make sure that we all see all elements of the slide. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, so current data center capacity in megawatts. And I believe this is 2024 data. So, we could expect that it's a little bit of a change. But consider, some of the disparities across the region, right? Indonesia at 200 megawatts with expected additional capacity of 270%. Thailand really going up very quickly at 550%. Philippines, et cetera. Singapore has a very high existing capacity in megawatts for data centers. And then, of course, as you probably know, Batam, which is just to the south of Singapore, has become a data center hub, in part because it's close to cables and other infrastructure in Singapore, often also serving a lot of activities in Singapore. We get into the issue of latency. So, the distance between the processing center, the data center, and then the customer who needs that data. So distance matters, right? So some interesting dynamics in Southeast Asia, and I believe it is a real growth area for data centers, for better or for worse, and that thus the governance issues are going to be really important in this region. Next slide. And then, of course, this is, a little bit of a view of the number of data centers across Southeast Asian countries and who's doing it, right? AWS, Amazon World Services, Google, NVIDIA has plans for a massive facility here in Indonesia as well. Microsoft, Oracle, and others. So we can see that these global tech corporations are looking at Southeast Asia as an important market for their AI services, and thus as an important place to locate their data centers. Also, of course, with consideration to things like energy capacity, costs, and the rest. Next slide. Now, my colleagues, whom I mentioned before, a group of colleagues in Utah, California, Auburn, and other places, have been embarking on an initial research project to ask, how do we understand data centers? Are they just physical buildings? How can we look at them as, in this case, socio-ecological technical systems, or SETs? And socio-ecological technical systems comes from a long line of scholarship and research, emerging primarily out of the work of Elinor Ostrom and people who studied with Elinor Ostrom, who are now very influential, out of Indiana University, socio-ecological systems and institutional analysis. Well, when we break it down into this type of framework, it helps to target what we're talking about. So S for social, we talk about workers, jobs and employment, host communities, the tax base, so fiscal issues. And what we see a lot in competition to attract data centers is sort of fiscal incentives, right? So there might be tax cuts or tax holidays for companies that locate their data centers in certain places. How does this hollow out the tax base of any given community? Those are important issues. If we look over at the E for ecological, we've talked about this a little bit, water withdrawals and the requirements of water, wastewater. What do we do with water that needs to be retreated, land conservation and zoning, and then the technical systems. These are within the data centers, cooling, what kinds of cooling capacities do we need, what kind of sort of broadband or sort of data transmission capacity do we need, and then grid connections for energy. Next slide. And of course, timing as well. When we look at technical, social, and ecological systems, and this is work that we're hopefully going to be publishing fairly soon, we look at different dynamics among these issues over time. Right. So we see, from the technological side, initially, right there's sort of a site selection, there's the permitting and decision-making process, and then there's the construction and the operation. On the social side, you have the decision-making processes at the governance level. That includes, councils and utilities and agencies collaborating to decide and approve a facility, but then also the public feedback. And then, of course, a role for the social and governance aspects, even through the operation of the data center. And then, of course, the ecological systems, which are taking account of the environmental feasibility of a data center, what's the existing water system, and then over the long haul, what are going to be the longer term impacts. Next slide. So I'm going to walk us through what we have considered are some of the challenges related to data centers, and that will be pretty much the remainder of this presentation across energy, water, land use, governance, and some other issues as well. We're probably all aware that data centers require a tremendous amount of energy capacity. And when we talk about data centers, we really have to think about the difference in types of data centers. We've had data centers for a long time, and many of them have been cloud-based data centers operating on CPUs and fairly elementary, not massively impactful. The real transformation and what's really brought this to the agenda now is the growth of AI, the need for GPUs within data centers, which require a lot more energy, a lot more capacity for data transmission, et cetera. They are a qualitatively different type of data center. And so typically when I refer to data centers, I'm referring more to the AI data centers that house GPUs. An example of this is Project Blue in Tucson, which has been through a very interesting pathway in terms of being denied approval, but then being approved in other ways. There you see a town hall meeting on the bottom right-hand corner of people that were sort of pushing back against that. It's a massive facility that was planned to go in Tucson, Arizona, which is near Phoenix. Concerns about grid strain, concerns about the additional production of energy relying on fossil fuels rather than on renewables as well, something I'll talk about a little later. And this brings up some tensions related to the growth of AI and decarbonization. Are we going to delay or set back our progress on energy decarbonization simply because we need to ramp up capacity very quickly for data centers, and it takes a little longer to get renewable energy generation facilities online? And maybe the renewable energy overall doesn't have the same type of supply consistency that a lot of data center operators want. They want base load energy capacity, which is typically going to come from our fossil fuels and our what we call our legacy infrastructure in energy. Also, of course, anytime in a market-based system you have a massive uptick in demand, you're going to see that reflected in prices. And the concern, of course, is that individual communities will and the residents will be faced with higher per unit energy prices. And this is also even more of a concern because many of these data centers and their operators have negotiated or try to negotiate lower per unit energy prices simply based on the volume of demand, right? So if you come into a community and you say, I'm going to be buying, X amount of megawatts of power, and I'm a big customer, why don't you make a deal with me? Why don't you sell to me at a slightly lower per unit price since I'm giving you so much demand, right? Or so much business. Next slide. We've been studying the case of Independence, Missouri. So a colleague, not only John Fisk at University of Utah, but a colleague at the University of Missouri at Kansas City named Susan Opp. We have been looking into a case in Independence, Missouri, a massive data center proposed there, and some controversy around that as well. And we're trying to gather data about how the public feels about these data centers. What are their perceptions and concerns? And it's interesting in terms of thinking about how we access data. There are data about public feedback from meetings, public meetings and hearings. There's also data that we can get, and this is in this case what you see on the slide, from Reddit. So Reddit is a social media platform where people share their views on anything, really. And it's kind of like Facebook without the photos in a way. But Reddit is very active in the United States, and a lot of people, community organizers, have turned to social media to galvanize public either public opposition or at least public awareness about what's going on. And here's some interesting data that I just pulled here, randomly out of some of the trove of data we have. Soon we'll have to ration our water and cut off our electric so these pressure data centers can have theirs. So they're talking about how the data centers are going to be given privileged access to resources. Today, I learned that increasing cost of delivery fees in our electric bills comes from data centers. This brings up the idea of utilities possibly wanting to, needing to recover the costs of additional infrastructure. How do you do that in terms of passing that price along to customers, right? If you need to build out more energy generation, more transmission lines, et cetera, where are you going to pay for that? Are you selling bonds? Are you going to raise rates on existing customers? Are you going to ask higher levels of government for that money, so to transfers or subsidization, et cetera? People are wise to this. Data centers don't employ many people, and the main cost of running a data center is electric. So companies have every incentive to push for the lowest rates possible for themselves. Again, that's where the issue of not everybody's treated equally, potentially, in this case, right? Ironically, it's the corporation that's going to get lower per unit costs, and it's the household, the farm, the individual person is going to actually have a higher per unit cost, in this scenario. This is not to say this is happening everywhere, but it's an issue to look at. Next slide. Second issue is water. You see in the bottom right-hand corner, this is a rendering, an AI-based rendering actually, of what the Project Blue data center in Tucson, Arizona will look like. Well, as I told you at the beginning of the presentation, my state, Arizona, is known for its beautiful sunshine and blue skies and warm weather, and everybody wants to move there and enjoy all the nice warmth and sunshine all year long. Don't need to worry about humidity. Don't need to worry about thunderstorms. It's always a beautiful day in Arizona, right? But one of the consequences of having a very arid climate and 360 days of sunshine per year is not much grows out there. There's not much water. And consequently, it's a desert. And as you can see from the photo. So when you drop in a huge facility like this data center, it really magnifies the water scarcity issues. Arizona, like most Western states, get most of their water from the Colorado River. California competes for Colorado River water. Arizona, Nevada, Las Vegas, other places. And not only are municipal uses of water a big drain, but a vast majority of water goes to agriculture. And the inland part of California is the breadbasket of the nation, producing so much of the produce that's consumed, right? So food. So if you think about all these competing uses, there already was a water concern. Now we layer onto that these data centers as well. Cooling capacity is one way. So with, as I mentioned before, the cloud-based data centers can use air cooling, but the GPU-based or AI-based data centers need more sophisticated cooling capacities that involve water. It could be evaporative cooling or other sort of circular water systems. The impacts, of course, as I said, on scarcity, equity concerns, people perceive that their water vulnerability goes even higher just because a corporation moved in. Is that politically acceptable? Are people going to say that's okay? Are they going to say That's fine because I benefit from the data center. Do they benefit from the data center? We all benefit from AI in some way, but do you at a very local level benefit from that data center next door? Is it giving you a job? Is it making the community better? Is it putting a lot more tax revenue into the pockets of local governments? Well, not if those local governments have attracted the data center by lowering their taxes. So what else is the benefit? Right. So again, you can see how this is a politically contentious issue. This raises the opportunity then to look at other solutions like circular water economy. Next slide, please. This is one example of how you might consider a circular hub model for an AI data center, which includes wastewater treatment and resource recovery. It assumes that there is an initial supply of water, in this case, like a river inlet or some sort of supply. It might be, from a reservoir. It might be rainwater catchment. It might be groundwater, aquifer water, etc. Whatever the source of the water, the concept is it goes into the data center system, into the industrial system, and then it remains there. It doesn't go back out. So there's not, there's a stock of water, but there's not a flow of water. Once you get enough water into the data center to operate it, you don't need to continue taking a lot of water out of the system. That's the ideal concept here. Nevertheless, that probably won't work in perfection. You can't have water completely in a system without losing some of it through transmission, particularly if you're using evaporative systems. That's not going to work. So there'd have to be other systems. The evaporative system doesn't really solve the circularity question. You'd have to be using water in another way in order to try to move towards a circular solution. And I'm not here to talk much about the mechanics of this, except to say that this is one of the options that's been proposed to try to reduce the challenge of water impacts of these data centers. Next slide. And this is another example. I was at UC Berkeley a few weeks ago where I did my master's in urban planning. And I returned to the urban planning department, which is housed in the School of Architecture. And it happened to be a day when students were presenting their master's thesis. And in architecture, you don't just stand up and speak your thesis. It's presented as a visual thing. Usually it's a design or a facility. And this one caught my eye here. This is what they call a thermal commons, a data center plus a bathhouse. Or if you think in Japan, an onsen, right? An onsen-based data center. So here's one creative way that not only water is reused, but heat is reused. So data centers give off a tremendous amount of heat. There was a recent study published this year on the heat, the immediate localized heat impacts of data centers, how it raised temperatures, ambient either air temperatures or land surface temperatures in the area right around the facility. You reuse the water, reuse the heat to heat the water, and bingo, you have a public bath that people can enjoy. So is this a way to make data centers give public value back to communities? Is this the way to make them more attractive? This is obviously very narrow. You wouldn't do this in every data center, but it's simply an example of how you can think creatively about some of these issues to try to increase the public value. Next slide. So here are some of that data that I talked about before from Reddit. Again, looking at the Independence, Missouri case, which is in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Here's one quote: "Before we as a city cheer on development, let's ask ourselves how all of this will impact our utility rates, which are already sky high, cost of water, as these data centers use massive amounts of water to cool equipment." So again, this is becoming a publicly known and understood phenomenon, at least among more educated people or people who want to educate themselves about the issue. For example, another quote: "A single data center, a multi-center Google campus near WOF will use as much electricity as the entire city of Lawrence," this is a city in Kansas, "and over 10 million gallons of water per day." It's really quite a number. Now, again, this is Reddit, so we're not vetting necessarily these numbers specifically, but this is the perception. These are the impressions. These are a sample of impressions we get. Could there possibly be a way to cure cancer that doesn't simultaneously require poisoning the drinking water? In other words, one of the ways that AI itself is being presented as a public good or public value is, look at all the amazing things it's going to help us do. AI is going to help us figure out the sustainability question. It'll help us figure out, extraterrestrial transport. It'll help us figure out how to cure cancer and all these problems in society that, humans sitting in a room, a bunch of smart humans couldn't figure out before. And what the person is saying there is, wouldn't it be nice if we could figure out how to do that without also poisoning the water, right? So we're talking about trade-offs here, and that quote kind of highlights that. Next slide. So land use in local environments. We've talked about water and energy, but how about just the physical footprint? It's a huge campus. These are often, sort of, you can call them data campuses rather than just simply AI data centers. They are often in semi-rural areas. It's difficult to find enough land area within a dense city for a data center, right? Where in the world would you put one here? You could put them in vertical data centers, right? You could put them in towers, I guess, in the middle of cities. But in general, corporations in America have been looking at the suburban areas or rural areas because that's where the space is. And also land's a little cheaper in those places than, right in the core of a city. But of course, you have noise, heat, and then other general ecosystem disruption as well. The issue is when you start to move into these suburban towns and these rural towns, these are not big cities. And they may not have ever seen such a large development in their history. Even a shopping mall or a train station or maybe an airport, okay, these are big infrastructure, but many of these cities don't even have those. So now all of a sudden we have a data center coming in at 3,800 football fields worth of building. How do they handle that? How does a smaller town and a mayor that might have been a history teacher at the local high school and a city council of people who might be gardeners or whatever, and are they really are we talking about a level of expertise needed to understand these impacts? And this is a governance capacity and a policy capacity question that I think data center issue really raises. And we can look back at other types of infrastructure to see what cities have done in light of that. Next slide. Here's an example from my metropolitan area. This is Chandler, Arizona, which is a suburb to the south of Phoenix. The Phoenix metro area is roughly 5 million people, very small in comparison to Jakarta, but still rather large by American standards. And one of the suburbs, called Chandler, started attracting data centers back in the 2000s. And this was an article from The Atlantic, and this was from 2019. So that's pretty long ago in the world of data centers. This probably was maybe a cloud-based data center rather than an AI data center. But either way, and it's called Cyrus One there, it was built in near a neighborhood. And people, and this article in The Atlantic was talking about people who in the neighborhood started hearing this persistent 24-hour hum, right? And it's a low frequency hum too, meaning that if it's at the very low frequencies, you can't just shut a door and keep it out. Anybody knows anything about, sort of soundproofing walls, et cetera? Low frequencies are very, very difficult to isolate and to keep out. When you talk about the equipment humming, the air conditioner, especially if you think about Phoenix area, which is hot anyway, 8 or 9 months of the year in Phoenix, it's hot. It's above 25 or 30 degrees. And a lot of the summer, it's above 40 degrees. So the cooling equipment there has got to be working extra hard. There's got to be a lot of it. And it's interesting from this quote here, I believe the author was talking about going to Chandler, talking to people, and what the author experienced herself. After a few other stops, we doubled back to concentrate in the area around Cyrus One. This is the author. For more than an hour, we circled its campus, pulling over every so often. As the sun and traffic dropped, the intensity of the hum rose, in other words, in the evenings or at night. The droning wasn't loud, but it was noticeable. It became irritatingly noticeable as the sky dimmed to black, escalating from a wheezy buzz to a clear, crisp, unending whine. It's very interesting to see how people describe noise. It's always hard to describe what a noise really sounds like, but it's clear that people were concerned about these things. If you go to the next slide, please, you'll see this is, I took this yesterday. This is just a screen grab from Google Maps. This is in Mesa, Arizona, which is a town neighboring Chandler. And what you see there in the middle are data centers, those big white things. I believe even Apple is one of those. It may be the one there at the corner of Elliott and Signal Butte Road, I think. But this is in a suburban area. Clearly, look at how the zoning is very obvious here. The town has set aside land for housing, and then it set aside other land for the construction of these industrial facilities. And look at how close everything is. Right now, if you were down on the, let's say, the right-hand side of that screen grab near Elliott Road, would you be comfortable paying $500,000 or $1 million for a house where you walk right out your back door and there's the data center and there's the hum and the warmth and even the aesthetics of it? These data centers are 6 or 7 levels high. They're very large, right? So that's not necessarily that attractive. Some of them, they might try to plant trees around them, et cetera. But this is what zoning was meant to solve. You know, you're supposed to have areas for residential and then areas for commercial and areas for, industrial and then area for the airport and all the rest of that. You're not supposed to mix all these together because you get the externalities, the negative externalities of these. And if you can think all of that sort of desert land that's not built out, you can be pretty sure that it probably will be built out eventually. This is just the very beginning. A lot of that area could become other industrial, but is very likely to become data centers as well. Next slide. So what do people say about the noise? This is from the Kansas City case. Noise. There are instances of a low hum vibration reported near data centers, and they should plan around that being there and put measures in to eliminate that so that nothing off the site is noticeable, right? So again, how do you isolate that noise and prevent it from getting out? I've seen reports of other recent data centers producing a low hum that can be heard and even felt by neighboring dwellings. So again, people are aware of this and they're starting to make their voices heard. Another says you can hear it for miles, right? So, a negative externality. Next slide. Now, how about just the broader impacts? We can get into this a little bit, but not too much. There are geopolitical implications of data centers. We live in the age of AI arms race. People want AI supremacy, the US and China in particular, and their large corporations fighting for the share of the AI market around the world, but other countries also trying to move in. Europe being another place that wants, AI, but their regulations are a little stronger in Europe in terms of transparency and sort of ethical and moral concerns. So right now it's kind of pushed by the US and China. So we have to get your rare earth minerals. That brings up the issue of global supply chains. Those rare earths don't always exist right where we want them to be. They have to be extracted. The previous presenter talked about that, labor, what labor has gone into the mineral extraction for construction of data centers, but construction of the components within data centers, so the technological components that house those data centers. And are we aware of that? Or are we blind? Is that invisible? The suffering of people who are exploited, whose labor is exploited in these regions. Underpaid, maybe they are underage, maybe they work in very hazardous or dangerous conditions, right? So thinking about those types of things as well. Also thinking about e-waste. I do a little bit of work on circular economy. So how can we, valorize waste and reuse it in future products? So what happens when all this hardware becomes obsolete? It's a massive build out of all of this tech hardware. Think of iPhone. The last iPhone I had was the iPhone 3, and then I became a non-iPhone user. I'm now an Android user. But none of us would buy an iPhone 3 now. I remember it was back in 08 or 09. It's kind of a weird shaped phone. It was very heavy, completely obsolete now. Where are all the iPhone 3s? They're somewhere. They're in a pile somewhere. Maybe some of their parts have been mined, et cetera. But just think about the progress of technology, and we go through waves of obsolescence, right? And just because we're doing all the GPUs and data centers now doesn't mean that someday we're going to figure out a better way to do it. Everybody's always working on a better way and a cheaper way and a faster way to do it. The infrastructure will be obsolete. What happens then? Right, on this build out. Legacy infrastructure, we call that, or stranded assets. The picture on the right is kind of a historical lesson. The picture on the right is Cleveland, Ohio, and Cleveland is what we call sort of a former industrial powerhouse in the Rust Belt of the United States. We see cities like this around the world, the Ruhr Valley in Germany, the British Midlands and Manchester and Liverpool, et cetera. So you can go to these places and see what does a post-industrial landscape look like. In this case, Cleveland, Ohio, abandoned factories. People just walked away. They were obsolete. There was nothing new that could be done with them. There wasn't a new type of use that would make sense to be put into facility. So it just sits there. Now, in the future, when we think about data capacity, right? What about these data centers? Are they able to be transitioned into another type of use? What are we going to do with them, right? So this is one of the issues we have to plan for, especially in a circular economy context, where we're always thinking about end of life. A life cycle analysis approach to data centers says it's not just important what they're doing now. It's important what they're going to be doing in the future when we don't need them anymore, or we're going to change what they do. So this is part of the decision-making process we have to have. Next slide. And then finally, the business strategy. As I said before, businesses are under increasing pressure to meet societal expectations, not just maximize shareholder value, but to be good corporate citizens in the broader society, to not destroy the environment, to treat people with dignity and equity, et cetera. And yet, one of the big steps for that is demonstrating a lack of reliance on fossil fuels, trying to embrace the energy transition through renewable energy. How will the data center phenomenon that we see now set these goals back? Right. So our data center is going to be exempted from renewable energy requirements just because of their large size, or just because they need to be put online as quickly as possible. This is a timing issue here. So, as it takes a little bit longer to do renewable energy infrastructure, potentially, we might revert back to our existing fossil fuel infrastructure or refire up the coal plant, something like that. Interim technology or interim generation capacity for energy, right? So we can see our progress on some of these decarbonization goals starting to flatten out, particularly as we look at data on the SDG tracker and other sort of monitoring efforts around the world about, are we really transitioning to a green energy portfolio. China's made good progress in that, and other countries have made progress because China is a major manufacturer of solar panels and some of these other green tech infrastructures. What's the risk here? Greenwashing. That's a form of just saying, all right, well, we're doing some good things for the environment, but at a very superficial level, not really meaningful transition. Techno-optimism, basically saying the tech will save us, right? The AI will figure out the question or the problem. We will, at some point in the future, have a tech that will mean that we can just transition completely to renewable energy. What does that look like? We don't know. That's the point, because it's techno-optimism. It's saying the tech will always stay just a little bit ahead of our own unsustainable practices. Over-reliance on offsets or market mechanisms. This is, particularly in market-based economies, this is a very popular solution. Let's market make. Create a market out of it. That leverages competition. It leverages commercial interest and these types of things. Well, carbon offsets would be one example of that. All right, so we offset our carbon emissions by planting 1,000 trees in the Amazon rainforest, for example. Right. So, how reliable is that? Can we track it? Can we monitor it? Can we hold those things accountable? And finally, lack of transparency in AI-specific energy use. Again, it gets back to what some of those people said, right? One of them said in the comments that this, extra fee, when they looked at their electricity bill, it just said additional fee or something. It didn't say additional fee because a big data center is being constructed. Just says additional fee, right? So utilities might not be very proud about having to raise fees because now they have this big user, but it's not much of a mystery. People know what's going on in their communities. You can see the data center going up. You can see what's on your electric bill that it's going up, and you can put two and two together, right? So this is a political reality that a lot of mayors and other elected officials are going to have to confront. Next slide. And then, of course, there's lack of jobs. Data centers have been given to us or promised to us in a variety of optimistic ways. It's going to improve computing capacity. It's going to bring investment in your community, and it's going to create jobs. But there have been studies that have said that the creation of jobs that's promised by AI data centers is overestimated. That it does create some relatively high-paying jobs, and it creates temporary jobs, construction jobs, things like that, logistics. But in general, this isn't a normal kind of industrial facility. This isn't an assembly line with hundreds or thousands of workers in union jobs, good middle-class pay, like we saw in many countries throughout the mid part of the 20th century that helped build the middle class in many countries, including the US and Europe. This is minimal labor. Labor is the primary cost for most industries, right? And in this case, it's going to be energy is the primary cost. The labor needs are relatively low for data centers, and there is always an incentive to reduce that labor need anyway. It's not just going to go up out of charity, right? If you can get rid of jobs, that's what you do, because then you can be more profitable, right? So some of those comments, I won't go through them, but some of the comments reflects that people are aware that the job promises have been exceedingly high. Next slide, please. And just wrapping up here, policy responses, what I've observed just casually and what we're getting into in our research, there's several different types. There's just sort of go forward anyway, let the people complain, but just do it and then justify it after the fact. Or let the dust settle and people will move on. They'll forget about it. It's kind of like in the US, like a political scandal, right? If you just deny it or ignore it, people are going to be interested in something else tomorrow, right, or next week. It'll cycle out of the news cycle. Precautionary principle to allow that data centers to be built, but to try to put guardrails in, right? So in numerous different ways, right? Ways that protect local communities, ways to protect the environment, et cetera. And then there's the moratorium approach, which seems to be quite popular now. So a lot of people are, when we look through the data and we see what people are saying, so many of them are just saying no data centers, then period. And then they end their comment. Not even justifications. They just said, no, don't want this. And what I find is interesting about it is because unlike many other issues, this is really blending political narratives here. You've got on one hand, anger and a concern about what it's going to do to my community right down the street. It's going to take my water, it's going to, drive up energy prices. It's not even going to give us any jobs. And I don't even use AI very much anyway, so I'm not going to benefit from that. Okay, so there's that side of it, but there's also the bigger AI side of it, right? There's the corporate side. You could call it techno-feudalism, right? It's the idea that our policies and our society is working for the benefit of large corporations. So there's that element of the political side that's coming in as well. And we see that a little bit in the no AI and no data center kind of protests here. And you see them up on the right. Tax the data. And data centers, I think it says on the right, though you can't see, it says data centers are bad, just Google it. So there are all these different ways. This is from a protest in California fairly recently. Policy scales, for those who are interested in the research side of this, particularly the governance and policy side, you can look at all kinds of scales. There's the state and province and prefecture level, prefecture in Japan, the idea that, you're looking at this at a regional scale. There's the local and municipal scale, which I said before is interesting because a lot of those governments don't have the capacity to manage what's happening to them. They've never seen a facility this big. And then there's the issue of preemption. That is, which level of government can override which other level of government? So what we've seen in the US are state level policies that keep localities from denying data center permission, basically. So what state governments are saying is we need data centers to grow our state. But these annoying cities and municipalities keep blocking them. So we can't have this. So let's create a state level law that says, no, you can't deny a data center, to go in, something like that. So that's a preemption issue. And then of course, how do they justify it? Policy narratives. This is good for our economy. It's good for economic recovery, post-COVID economic recovery, or, a job situation is not that great. How about global competitiveness too, right? We need to be a first mover in this to get out in front. So that's the techno-optimism. And on the other hand, the techno-fatalism approach. Techno-fatalism saying, listen, AI is here to stay. We're not going to complain it away. Data centers are here to stay. If you fight a data center in place A, it's just going to go to place B. It's going to go to place C. And this is the techno-fatalist narrative, which is interesting because a lot of people would say, no, we don't have to accept this. It doesn't have to be our fate. And other people will say, it's technology, it's progress. You're not going to stop it. Just figure out how to deal with it, right? Next slide talks about the national level policy responses. We don't really have, if you go to the next slide, we don't really have a national level policy in the United States. In fact, the whole point, next slide, please. The whole point of the U.S. is, to actually let individual states decide. And here's an example. At the state level, Maine issued a moratorium, which is basically you can't do it. You can't build them. And look at the narrative down there. It says, this is not a bill against innovation, nor is it a rejection of economic development. Maine has always been a place that embraces new industries and new ideas, but we are also a state that understands the value of stewardship of our land, our water, our communities, and our long-term future. It's an interesting statement because a lot of people who are promoting this data center would say, well, if you oppose it, or AI in general, if you oppose it, you're anti-growth. You don't want people to get rich. You don't want our country to do well. You don't want to be competitive. And yet, and then on the other side of it, it's okay. Well, if you support environment or pro-environmental land, water, or human rights, et cetera, you're just anti. You're anti-growth or anti-capitalist or something to that effect. Why can't we have a middle ground? Right? Why can't we support these things but put guardrails in to make sure that they're actually protecting people? Next slide. Same thing in Provo, Utah, case that we've been looking at as well. So talking about where energy comes from. And this is actually, here you see closed loop system for data center. So again, local governments trying to find ways that are a middle ground, right? Let's do this, but let's do it in a sustainable way. Next slide. And then here, just a little bit of initial analysis we did on this case in Utah, talking about when people speak, what are they concerned about? Mostly economic benefit, jobs, resource use, land use, environment, infrastructure, et cetera. So we're just getting into the very early stages of quantifying what this qualitative data actually says, coding it into what types of opposition there are and what do people really care about. Next slide is a little bit more of the same. This is another example of frequency summary optimism. What are you optimistic about? And a lot of the same types of things as well. Next slide, and I'm going to skip pretty close to the end here. A national scale, what would that look like? Well, you can't look to the U.S. because we don't have a national scale policy on data centers. That's the point. Let states decide. Very decentralized, a very federalized, I call it digital federalism or data center federalism. In Japan, there is a digital infrastructure development plan 2030 that specifically mentions data centers, talking about submarine cables, talking about a variety of other issues, the distribution of data centers across the country according to spare energy capacity. That's a very interesting point. If you look around a given country, right, in the electricity grid, there will be some places that are taxed for their electricity capacity. They don't have all the capacity they need. There are other places that produce a lot more energy than they actually use. So that spare energy goes into other directions through the grid. It goes to cities that need it. It goes to facilities that need it. So cite those data centers in places that have spare energy capacity so you won't be dragging down the energy needs of big cities, et cetera. So there's some other issues there you can look at, but I think that at the national level, Japan has shown a much better model in trying to plan across the entire nation. Next slide. In closing, finally, last two slides. I move out to the philosophical aspect. I'll conclude with the philosophical aspect. This image at the top, not a photograph, it's just a painting, is from the 1940s, and it's talking about mail delivery. you might think of, if you still check your mailbox. I don't check my mailbox but about once a month. There's never anything interesting in there, and it's all just junk mail and advertisements, right? Because we don't communicate that way anymore. Our paradigm for communication has changed. Back in the old days, they said, okay, we have a system. The system is to deliver the mail, but how do we optimize the system? Any good manager or management is always trying to optimize flow. Right? How do you identify the constraint, get the flow to go faster, cheaper, more efficient? And their solution was, well, let's give every mail carrier a jetpack because they're going from one house to another. And we want them to just go from one house to another faster. We want to do the same thing, but we want to do it faster. So the jetpack becomes a type of technology. Now, is that a transformational technology? Is it a paradigm shifting technology? Of course not. We don't live in a world where we're trying to make mail carriers go faster and faster. We're not trying to optimize that anymore because our paradigm has shifted. So the question is we have to ask, with every new technology, is it simply a cheaper and a faster way to do what we already do now? Or is it truly a transformation or a paradigm shift? For example, for AI and data centers, right? Is it the jetpack here? Is it just going to make us do the same wrong things faster, the same unsustainable things faster, the same inequitable things faster? I think there's a lot of optimism around AI. It's going to make society better. Well, in certain ways, it'll make things faster and it'll make things cheaper. But making things better for the environment, making things better for people and communities, making communities more equal, more fair, and more just? No. That's still a decision. That's still a way of operating that is embedded in the way we do. We need to look more into ourselves rather than expect the technology to do that. Next slide is the final slide. And it's an interesting one because on the left, I use this with my students. The left is called the streetlight effect. And the streetlight effect is this gentleman who's looking there has lost his keys. And he lost the keys across the street. His keys are across the street. They're out of the picture. And somebody comes up to him and says, oh, I saw your keys. They're across the street. Why are you looking here? And his answer is, I'm looking here because that's where the light is. And he has a magnifying glass and he's looking where the light is, but even more. That's not going to get him any closer to finding his keys, right? The narrow scope of what AI or technology can help us accomplish is like the street light, right? It can accomplish only certain things that we can measure. It's like they say in business, you can't manage what you can't measure. So we only look at what we can quantify, what we can put a number to or put a value to. Remember, they say economists know the price of everything and the value of nothing, right? So you can put a price on it, but what about social values? What about cultural values, right? So the one on the right is what I conclude with. In the US, when you take road trips, you often enter a community. They'll have a sign there at the beginning. They'll say, here's the name of the town. Here's when the town was founded. It was founded in that case, 1802. What's the altitude of the town above sea level? Oh, it's 620 feet. We use feet, not meters. What would that be in meters? Like 200 meters or something? 200 meters above sea level. And then the population. How many people live here? 3,700. For a grand total of 6,122. 6,122 what? I mean, it's a simple joke about adding like or differing units. Right? So the point is, and I like to use it, just because you have the data doesn't mean you understand it and doesn't mean that you're using it well. So what a lot I've written about in the last several years is we can optimize the data very easily because we can add more technology to it. We can add more energy to it. We can just scale it up. We can have all these numbers. But has that improved the way we're using the numbers, the insights we get out of those numbers? Something like only 1% of data generated by smart cities and everything else are even analyzed. You know, there's a lot of data sitting out there not analyzed. So we're generating a lot of stuff and we're measuring our success by how much data we're generating, not by the actual impact that we have. Because translating the data to the impact takes good governance, good decision-making, and things that can't be measured. So I think that we have to be realistic about potential of AI to transform us. And of course, data centers being a physical manifestation of AI brings up a lot of new questions about how fair are we making decisions about environment, energy, and land use in our communities. So this is a lot of the work that I'm going to be proceeding with in the coming years with colleagues. We're working, as I said, across countries to look at these things. We're working on a variety of different issues. We're quantifying energy and water use, so we're doing that aspect of it. But I wanted to share with you some of the political and social aspects of it, which we're looking at as well. And then hopefully we'll be also running our own surveys and doing our own interviews with people to see what their experience is with AI and data centers, and whether that has actually increased their trust in government and in corporations, whether that has improved their lives, or whether it's simply returning a lot of value to shareholders, but not really having any great impacts on people and communities. So I'll leave it there, but thank you for being such an attentive audience. And I hope I've touched on some issues that are of interest to you, and I'm very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hartley. Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Hartley, so I think this kind of very inspiring and full of knowledge that you share with us. Actually, it's maybe because we're not aware of that. So just like in the Times magazines, it said that it just look like they're afraid, but we're not, because we're not afraid of that. We're losing and the very noisy things that they are created from DC. So thank you for sharing with us. And we will now open the floor for discussions and question and answer. This is an interaction sections and session, so I encourage all participants to share and raise the questions and start from this room. I think if there's a question, Pak Sigit, maybe you want to ask the questions, please. You? Or maybe someone else? Okay, Bu Evi, please.
Thank you, Chris, for your very enlightenment presentations. I have a questions that actually about last Friday, I shared a webinar with the Society of Indonesian Informatics. Oh yeah, that's the name. Indonesian Informatics Social Science for Community or something like that. But AI in government in Indonesia. And one of the questions from the audience said, if we use AI in very massive ways, how about we concern about the energies concern should be applied for this for the data centers. Indonesia have problem not only to manage the energy for data centers, but also in providing the genset generators for the data centers. We have problem that as well. That's the first problem, and the next problem will be also how to manage the energy, the water, and etc. What I'm worried after your presentations is now we have problem with governments which is pseudo economic growth, which is that they say that we have a good economic growth, but actually for ourselves feel that it's not really growth economic growth. Yeah, everything's so costly in Indonesia. So I'm worried that for our local governments, for the sake of economic growth, they will accept any kind of investment, yeah, for data center, something for the sake of this will be create jobs. This is good for your AI user, but actually it's not that chance as you told us, yeah, for the local people, what they get from that data centers building and etc. For about our waters, we also have dry region as well, like in Nusa Tenggara Timur, NTT, Sumbawa, something. They have very have dry like Arizona. So I think that's also our problem. So what I'm going to ask you, how to build awareness to our local governments that data center is not only economic investment, but also threatens your life for futures and also our life. Even in Singapore, I think last years they have some rivers already drowned because they put a lot of data centers next to that rivers across the Singapore. Thank you, Chris. My name is Evi.
Thank you, Dr. Avey. Appreciate those questions, and I think you bring up a lot of fascinating issues. And I appreciate, first of all, the opportunity to hold forth on the energy side. The state of energy generation capacity and transmission capacity is a challenge in places that are underinvested, fiscally strained, and rapidly growing for population, but also, energy demand, industrial, et cetera. Now, some of, the narrative around data centers is emerging around sort of energy independence of the data center itself. So on-site energy generation, SMRs, small modular reactors, et cetera, being one example of that. Interestingly, in the United States, Microsoft, I think, has purchased 3 Mile Island. So 3 Mile Island is a nuclear power generating facility in Pennsylvania that experienced a partial meltdown in 1979, I believe it was, and most of it went offline. They didn't continue to use it, and it was dead infrastructure. It was abandoned infrastructure in a large sense, although I think a small part of it was still operating. Microsoft buys it, right? So you have these decommissioned nuclear facilities that might be targets for purchase by these corporations as well. But I think that if data centers are going to go forward, finding some ways to make them not only water circular, but energy independent is going to be a good way to go forward, especially if we're doing data centers in smaller towns or more far-flung regions, right, with less reliable grid connections. The economic growth argument's very interesting. So this is one thing personally that I find really peculiar about this narrative. So if you say, we're going to build a narrative, think about where you grew up or the town where you live. And the mayor says, you know what, NVIDIA is interested in building this massive data center here. And you say, okay, what's going to be the benefit? What's going to be a benefit to me? So, well, is it going to be, more tax revenue that can be invested in schools and roads and everything? Well, actually, we gave them a tax break to convince them to come here. Okay, then there's not a tax advantage. How about a jobs advantage? Okay, but my son's just graduating from Polytechnic. You're going to hire him over there, right? Well, actually, we really only need managers because these systems can kind of run themselves. So, okay, maybe not so much of a job advantage. Then there's the economic growth advantage. You might say, okay, well, this data center, our community is going to bring economic growth and activity. How? What will it do? Really, the only engine for economic growth in an industrial facility would be it's providing jobs at a pay that is good enough for people to then, be economic agents within their communities, right? High enough pay so I can buy a house and take a vacation and buy clothes and go out to eat. And all of that is spillover, ancillary economies, right? But without the employment, it might not have that effect. Now, think about the benefits. Who is getting the benefit? Well, I think two people. One, the users are, and users are global in a sense, right? Even though there is sort of latency issue, you might have a data center near a very large user, like a hospital or a research park or something like that. So that's one benefit. Who else is the benefit? It's, the company that it's running it, right? Now, that company may or may not be headquartered or based in your community. They're in Germany or the US or Canada or somewhere very far away, right? So the economic surplus and the value that's being generated, the profit, is going to those places. It's not like, okay, we have, this is a company, it's a shoe factory, and it employs people here, and it's owned by people here, and all of that. No, this is, the reality of globalization means the benefits are spread elsewhere. So I think it's increasingly difficult to make that economic argument, and I'd like to see, what they're really going to try to do to convince communities that it's going to be helpful to them. And finally, you said the, building awareness as well, building awareness about these issues and about, the lives and the livelihoods of people in these communities, right? I think good education is making people more aware of issues like environmental and social problems. And I think we see this showing up in the data, but we also have to consider that the data are people who chose to speak up. So they already have an emotional reaction, or they have a knowledge base that allows them to contribute to the discussion. If you were to survey people just across the public, a representative public survey, I wonder how many people would really be aware of the energy issues, the water issues. These people who are posting on Reddit or who are coming to town hall meetings are a self-selecting group of people. They know about the issue, they care about it, they're angry about it, or they support it. They might support it as well, but they're educated about it. So how do we think about, making the public more aware of these things? I think these are fair issues as well. And that really gets back to broader level of education about sustainability overall. I'm at a school of sustainability. We promote sustainability education in secondary schools as well. When I was growing up in the 1980s, we didn't have sustainability, in our classes. I don't even think we had it at the university level, at least not anything called sustainability. But now I think we're trying to work it into school curricula as well. And maybe the next generation of people are going to be wiser about these issues. Then maybe you're going to see more political activity around these things as well. Of course, we have to think that political activity is also dependent on the political system in any given country. In the US, here, other places, you can speak out about these things, right? But what about in, Bahrain, or what about in, let's say, countries, even China, right? Are you allowed to really, draw a sign and then march around outside City Hall saying no data centers? I don't know if you'd be able to do that. Maybe, but maybe not as well. So I think it comes down to political system and liberal exchange of information. But excellent points. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Between better, faster, cheaper in public services, that nowadays in the AI era, faster, cheaper, better. It will be like a trade-off between the sustainability and what you get as a what you got in the previously before the AI eras. That's what innovations in public sector. But now with AI, it will be compromised with the sustainability. So that's really good insight for your today lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that is an interesting point. It's about calculating the trade-offs, the costs and the benefits. So if it's faster, cheaper, and if it's better in the sense that the product is better, like when I do a Google search now, it gives me more targeted description, then okay, there's a certain amount of benefit, right? But what are we trading for that? Environmentally, is that built into our dialogue about how we think about faster, better, cheaper? And a lot of this comes out of my ideas about smart cities, which is basically, okay, we're going to make this city more sustainable, more prosperous, more equity, all these goals, right? And just because we have government agencies adopting technology, okay, they cut their costs, they cut their response times. In certain ways, that's a quality improvement, right? My town council knows what my challenge is. There's a pothole in the road, or my garbage didn't get collected, or my power's off, all the rest of this. Yeah, maybe they can respond to these things. But again, the lesson is sort of being realistic about what it can and can't do. Yeah, it can improve operations. Can it make your society more equitable? Can it make your world more sustainable, et cetera? Those are promises, I think, that are far beyond the tech. That's more about our decisions and our values. And I think we should absolutely, in a social science context, be engaging with those ideas. When we think, oh, data centers and AI is just tech, right? What do values have to do with it? That's part of the problem. It does a lot to do with it. Absolutely. Absolutely right. Thank you for those interesting points. No, thanks.
Thank you, Ibu Evi, for the questions, and I hope the discussions will answer your questions. And the time is very limited, actually. It's nearly 2 minutes to 11, but I think there's another questions, maybe, from this room.
Sure.
Or,
and then one here as well, I think.
Okay, Pak Sigit, please.
Thank you very much. Good presentation. I'm Sigit Setiawan. I'm not from this research center. I'm from Economic Industry Services and Trade Research Centers.
Oh, right.
Yes, my group is researching about EV, AI, and human resources.
Okay, great.
Pardon me, it is for because I am not too close in AI. My research in EV, so maybe my opinion is not good enough. I have a different opinion with Mbak Evi because this Indonesia is have deindustrialization, so we have a lot of extra power. That's why government in the recent try to make using electric stove or EV that use the extra power that because we have so many extra power. So data center maybe is the best solution to use that extra power. Firstly, secondly, Indonesia have so long, so many coastal region. So the data center can be put in the coastal region, like in Hainan cluster or in Scotland. Microsoft have make a data center in underwater, so the cooling system is not evaporative. They use seawater for cooling system. Also, in coastal water, coastal region, we have so many what you call it, using the heat, like making salt, making ikan asin. That's using heat. That can use the heat from the data centers. Remember, one of the some research say that data centers will increase temperature 2 degrees centigrade within 10 miles from the data centers. So maybe in the US, it's become very dangerous, but for Indonesia, if data center put in the coastal region, it will help the petani tambak and others in the area. So it's maybe advantageous for Indonesia to become, especially in Java, because the city is in the coastal region, so they can the data center can service the city very close and making a delay for the signal is very slow. Firstly, secondly, this is from AI. With current technology using a transformer algorithm, there is no way that the usage of energy and memory becoming lower. So many research center using other technology, researching other technology such little language model or mixture of expert model to just to lower the resources. So for current AI, actually, like Microsoft now say that their staff cannot use AI again because the price of AI using AI is the same of the wage of the person using it. That's I think began this month. The Microsoft, Nvidia is banned using AI from cloud because the price of the using AI is the same of the wage of the person using it. So becoming not economical. If that trend is continue, then the bubble of AI bubble will burst.
Excellent. Thank you for those two very interesting points. And again, this is me learning from you all as much as the other way around as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to go very.
Actually, we need to discuss so many. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. Very quickly on the issue about coastal regions, I think this causes us to think more holistically about not necessarily as only a data center, but maybe an infrastructure facility that is a data center, but a saltwater or desalination facility, maybe, using the latent heat and that, to do other sort of industrial or infrastructural things. So that would be really kind of a closed system, maybe a true definition of circularity, right? Which is interesting. And the second is, just basically a kind of a managerial pricing concern, right? The trade-off between what we're paying for AI versus the jobs, the payroll that we have, and trying to balance the two. And I think that you're right about the AI bubble, right? If we move into a period where these companies are going to try to recover their massive upfront R&D and capital costs, right? So are they going to try to squeeze, users, from a user, even like, ChatGPT now is free, but you only get to a certain number of queries before they say, okay, now you need to pay if you want to use the most updated version of that. So I think we're only going to see that kind of squeeze more and more. So, and they're a business. They're going to squeeze their customers as much as possible and to get you to that frontier, that breaking point where you're indifferent, where you're going to pay as much as you possibly can to continue to be a customer. And those are the interesting pricing issues. It'd be just interesting to see.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hartley. We have to be very efficient because two other questions
Okay,
in the online.
no
Okay.
problem.
First, we have chatting from the Zoom. Okay, from M. Zuhri. And the question is, what would be the implementation framework if a national mandate requires all Indonesian universities to establish mid-scale international standards AI data centers? This requires specific facilities, specifications, and advanced schooling infrastructure, particularly through international government cooperations. That's the first one. And the other one is raising hand from, that's left already. Rahmat Wibowo, okay. Please. Are you still here, Pak Rahmat? Oh, okay. Please answer the first questions in the online that I read.
And I want to make sure I understand that question correctly. So it sounds like you're talking about a national level implementation framework for AI or data center infrastructure.
Yes.
And what would that look like? Is that kind of
Yep.
the general question?
The mandate requires all Indonesians in university to establish mid-scale international standards AI data centers. So this facility, the
I see.
required facility for this kind of DC.
Right. That's interesting because, I mean, you get back to the issue of sort of regulatory scope and different types of regulations for different sorts of uses. I imagine that a lot of regulations around building, whether it's in universities or industrial facilities, et cetera, have already been established. So I think you have to think, what is unique about data centers? What is that extra or that marginal impact that they have that would require either an amendment to existing regulations or, starting from scratch with, a statement or a proclamation about what AI specifically need to do. And I think you can get back to, sort of feasibility analysis and assessment, right? Or impact analysis, right? So I think that in the next several years, we don't really know exactly what all the impacts of data centers are going to be. We see data centers now have been built, the first generation data centers, the cloud data centers and all the rest of that. But the hyperscale data centers, the ones that are gigawatt scale, right? So that's 1,000 megawatts, if I'm not incorrect, right? As those roll out, we have to take a longitudinal approach to our research on those things, right? We can't say we know the impacts of it the day it opens. We don't know the impacts of it the year after it opens completely, or maybe 5 years after, right? So it's going to take observing these things for a long period of time before we know really are our concerns about environment and society, are they coming true, or were we worried about nothing? So I think that the regulations on the national level, kind of implementation frameworks have to be built on that evidence. A lot of times now we're saying, it's kind of like COVID. When COVID came up, we didn't know everything about it. We didn't know, mortality rates and transmission rates and all the rest of that. So we're sitting there panicking. We got to do something. And we have to be very precautionary, because what if it's worse than we think it is? So we might be overly cautious about that. So, the masking mandates and all the rest of that, right? And certain countries did a lot and certain countries didn't. But that was an example of, and the broader question is, how does policy respond to a rapidly developing but uncertain issue? Right? And you look at COVID, you look at financial crisis, you look at safety, security, and other issues that are unpredictable and kind of crazy. And you have to wade your way through it. Data centers could arguably be the same thing, because we can't take what we know about smaller scale data centers and just say, well, the current data centers are just that, but scaled up. There might be actually categorically different and unique challenges. And I think that governments now should take the precautionary principle and assume within a range of scenarios and possibilities, maybe assume not the worst, but maybe the top third worst scenarios, if they really want to be aggressive about it. However, that's going to push back against their development ambitions, right? Because then companies are going to be like, well, if you're going to behave like this, we'll go to Malaysia or we'll go somewhere else. So it gets back to classic old balance between sort of being, aware of the impacts versus trying to take advantage of the benefits. And, so there's no easy way to do it, but I think in general, gathering data, things that you can prove, that's very important politically, and that's very important in terms of designing effective policy. And right now, the data is still being made. It's not fully out there yet for data centers. So, tough sledding on that part. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hartley.
You're welcome, Dr. Rizal.
Is there any questions in Zoom, or Zuhri, is it already answer your questions, or do you want to respond for the questions, for the answer? Okay, so now I open the final final opportunity for the questions from the room or the Zoom. And the time is ticking. I already passed 11 minutes.
Great.
Okay. Okay, there's no questions. Thank you very much. So we should apply for Dr. Hartley.
Thank you all very much. Chairman Mikasa, thank you.
Thank you, all speakers and participants, for your active engagement in today's workshops. We have heard important insights about data governance, data centers, AI policy. Yeah. And we have also explored opportunities for collaborations between BRIN and Arizona State University and also other universities in Indonesia. And to conclude, I would like to invite Bu Yanti, but she's still in call, so maybe we just have to wait for Bu Yanti. Okay, let's wait for her. Okay. After this, we should have a photo session. Okay.
So Arizona State University located in the yeah. Arizona State University called the Sun Devils. Arizona State is the largest university in the you have 140,000 students. Most of them in varsity students. So we're much larger than the university. Yes. And technically, we call it public university. But interestingly enough, the percentage of that we did operate is from the state government is less than 10%. So we're very much more reliant on the tuition, grants, philanthropy, and other sources of investment.
While we are waiting for Ibu Yanti, maybe you have the participants to sign for the presence list. It's already in the chat.
Which university are you going? you affiliated with the first? You work here at okay. And what's your field? Okay. Good. Yeah. Good. All right. Great. So you're competitor policy, right? For rice commodity. Yeah.
State. Also modeling AI tools that
Oh, good. Okay, that's great. That's a very relevant topic, for sure. And do you continue to work while you do the PhD?
Yeah.
So is your research and what you do work?
Communication grant.
Yes. So you need a few months so this article. Three, 2 1 article, right? That's a very high bar. Okay, so you're part of your PhD program, you just keep it stream and studies. What do you think we'll finish up?
Ya, Ibu Yanti. To conclude, it's your call
Apa aku nih?
to close.
Oh.
Please, Ibu Yanti.